One of the silent stars who arrived in Hollywood by way of Broadway, Madge Bellamy was among the most highly regarded and highest paid actresses of that era. Hailed by Motion Picture Classic in 1921 as the most sensitive face on the screen, this leading comedic talent of the 20s was also known for her disputes with studio bosses. In 1928, Bellamy walked out on her Fox contract, virtually ending her career. On the publication of her 1989 autobiography, A Darling of the Twenties, Kevin Brownlow noted it was Bellamy's attempt to confront the strange and willful personality that was hers 60 years ago. Madge Bellamy was born Margaret Philpott in Texas in 1899 or 1900. Her father was an English professor and football coach at Texas A&M before he embarked on a series of business ventures. Her mother, Annie, was a talented pianist who guided her daughter's career from her earliest performance at age 9 or age 5 in a touring company of Ada. Bellamy was an only child. Her father was an inventor, but was too trusting with his investors. The Philpotts moved from Texas to Colorado, where her father worked with the copper mines and sold used cars. Madge learned the true nature of living paycheck to paycheck while in Colorado. In her teens, she married Carlos Bellamy, a judge's son who was also an entertainer. They then got divorced, but Madge kept the name, perhaps on advice from an agent to avoid hints of divorce. Madge's mother then took her to Oklahoma City to try to jumpstart her career due to Madge's love of dancing. Madge's father would later retire to a farm and live apart from the family. From that point on, Madge's mother would control Madge's finances. Although her first appearance on Broadway was as a chorus girl in The Love Mill, she was singled out with a nod from one critic, Good Dancing by Margaret Philpott. She also caught the attention of theater owner Daniel Frohman, the brother of Broadway legend Charles Frohman, who suggested a name change to her married name Bellamy, which was more melodious. Frohman recommended her for the touring company lead of Pollyanna at $100 a week. Frohman was instrumental in shaping Bellamy's career, much like his brother was for Maude Adams, which you can learn about on my channel. Frohman offered Bellamy Madge New York parts after her career took a dip in the 1930s. I will be referring to Madge as Madge and Bellamy, both names are hers. Madge developed a toe dance involving running down a stairway on her toes, which she became famous for. She would refuse to engage in burlesque or other risky acts at the beginning of her career, and instead preferred to discuss Shakespeare with New York playwrights. Her look was decidedly baby doll, and she had a high-pitched voice to accompany this look. She would also sprinkle pepper on her lips and give electric kisses to her co-stars. During World War I, Madge developed an illness that required a surgery on her throat. She was very influenced by watching coffins come home from the front of World War I while touring various army bases with Pollyanna. Her illness coincided with this depressing event, and supposedly she could never sing a high C again. Madge got her first big break when she replaced Helen Hayes as the leading lady in the Broadway play Dear Brutus. Dear Brutus is a 1917 play by Peter Pan playwright J.M. Barrie, and gave Daphne du Maurier nightmares due to the biographical aspect of depicted incest between father and daughter characters. You can learn more about Daphne du Maurier and the Frohman theatrical family in their videos on my channel. After the tour of Dear Brutus ended, Bellamy joined a stock company in Washington, D.C., where she appeared in Peg o' My Heart. While a member of that company, she shot a screen test for director Thomas H. Ince. In November 1920, she signed a 3-year contract with Ince's newly formed Triangle Film Corporation and moved to California with her mother. Her first film for Triangle was 1921's The Cup of Life, starring Hobart Bosworth. She was able to express her narrative flair by helping name Triangle Films. For her first movie under contract, Bellamy did her own hair and makeup and supplied her own costumes, which were sewn by her mother, occasionally from lace curtains. From the start, she would write in her autobiography, she was disturbed by the way she was treated. It is very hard for a girl brought up in the South, as I had been, to be told to stand up while they looked me over like a horse, she wrote. Her grandfather was a Civil War veteran, and she remained close to her family her entire life. She won Hollywood fans in Mary Pickford and Jack Pickford by winning a role in the Pickfords' first produced movie in 1921. Bellamy said she just adored Mary Pickford. Bellamy would wear Mary Pickford's old dresses in films, despite Bellamy being slightly taller. Mary Pickford gave her hairstyling tips, including wrapping hair around at least 2 rollers 3 times and then sleeping with them in. Bellamy struggled with her appearance, frequently wishing she was a blonde like other women in film. In 1922, Bellamy won the prize part in Lorna Doone, directed by Frances Maurice Tournier. Bellamy would later live in Tournier's home, the Cedars, a triumph for her since she and the director did not get along. As Lorna Doone, Bellamy projected a sweet innocence as the aristocratic girl captured and raised by bandits before being swept away by a dashing hero. Guns would be fired behind her to give the most perfect look of surprise in the film. She thereafter became known as the Exquisite Madge, or the most beautiful girl in America, according to artist Penryn Stanlaws. She was cast in several melodramas by Ince. Publicity for Lorna Doone included a U.S. tour which began in the Harding White House, where Bellamy gave makeup tips to First Lady Florence Harding, and she posed with General John J. Pershing. Upon her return to Hollywood, she was passed over for the role in Eugene O'Neill's Anna Christie, the first of many serious dramatic roles she would lose. Although she was publicized as a serious actress, Bellamy bemoaned the fact that she did comedies for most of her career. "Tragedians are supposed to suffer," she once said, "and so I suffer in comedies." Her suffering was not only on film. In her autobiography, Bellamy recounted being cornered by various wealthy men at parties who insisted on knowing if she was a virgin or not. After she escaped, they would shower her with gifts, which her mother would return. There are hints here of Evelyn Nesbit and the world of John Barrymore, which you can learn more about on my channel. Bellamy lost her virginity due to a drunken assault from a tailor in her sitting room in her 20s, and thereafter didn't feel the same sense of dignity about her bodily self. In the John Ford Western classic, The Iron Horse, Bellamy portrayed the daughter of the first transcontinental railroad's chief contractor, tapping into the love Americans had for the railways at the time. Bellamy was lent out to other studios on many occasions, once to MGM, where Irving Thalberg had chosen her to star in Ben-Hur. She thanked him, but turned it down, saying it will just be a lot of horses. By her own admission, she was full of herself in those days, arguing with most of her directors, employing one as a target for her thrown shoe. Once, when Louis B. Mayer offered her a film, she turned him down because Mayer did not stand when she walked into the room. She would throw tantrums and lock herself in her room for up to 3 days if she encountered bullying on set. So by 1925, she began encountering difficulties due to several, quote, artistic differences she had with studio executives. However, she carried a torch for actor Walter Brennan for years, but when he proposed, she declined. She had no problem finding suitors, even with her mother in tow. She mingled with celebrities such as Charlie Chaplin, his brother Sid Chaplin, Paul Whiteman, Howard Hughes, who remained a lifelong friend, Jack Dempsey, and Bennett Cerf, and received numerous marriage proposals from tycoons, directors, lawyers, and leading men. Charlie Chaplin noted Bellamy's charade abilities and always picked her for his charade partner, which she recounted in an interview which is on YouTube. Although there were always men in her life, she had difficulty establishing any enduring relationship, feeling an immense pressure to marry, combined with her shame at losing her virginity. Supposedly, she married 7 times. In 1927, Fox executive Winfield Sheehan, with whom Bellamy was having an affair as Sheehan's wife Kay Laurel had died that year, attempted to cast her in the lead role of Diane, in the romantic drama Seventh Heaven. He proclaimed his love for her and said he would build a house for her. Bellamy later told author Anthony Slide that she was in fact cast as Diane, but was replaced by Janet Grainer, who won the first Academy Award for Best Actress for her work in the film, when she was in France shooting exterior shots. Bellamy instead appeared in romantic comedy Very Confidential, in which she appeared as a model who impersonates a famous female sports athlete. In 1928, Bellamy signed a 4-year contract with Fox and made her first talkie, Mother Knows Best by Edna Ferber, based on the life of the vaudevillian Elsie Janis. She was specially chosen by Fox as their star of their first ever talkie, This Is Mother Knows Best. This was what many critics considered to be her finest role, allowing her to demonstrate her versatility with impressions of Harry Lauder, Anna Held, and Al Jolson, which she had done at Hollywood parties for years. She received raves from the critics, who were at the same time enthusiastic about her future in sound. Full of spite against former lover Sheehan, she rejected his offer for the lead role in The Trial of Mary Dugan in 1929, which was later given to Norma Shearer, and became one of Shearer's biggest early successes. By the time of her first full-length, all-talking feature film Tonight at 12 release in 1929, Bellamy's career had taken a severe downturn due to several ill-advised choices she made in fits of anger. Fan magazines of the day called Bellamy Miss Firecracker due to her temperament. Despite her poor behavior off-set, she was still a fairly popular performer and was named an American Beauty by the Hollywood Association of Foreign Correspondents in reader-based polls. Bellamy wanted to play Peter Pan, like Mary Pickford and many other actresses in its first film. When she was offered the part of Wendy, since she was only considered to be, quote, second-rate, she said she didn't want any part at all, and the part of Peter Pan went to Gladys Cooper, who you can learn about on my channel. Bellamy later said of her career, "I got too big for my britches. I wanted too much money, and when it was not forthcoming, I quit." Like Louise Brooks, Bellamy wanted to be treated fairly and with respect, and have her intellect taken into account by the big, bank-backed studios. She did not get it. You can learn more about the studio system economics in that video on my channel. As time went on, Bellamy spurned more and more directors and smuggled bottles of bootleg booze into her studio, along with bottles of eyewash, so she wouldn't be suspected. She attended wild parties, was stalked, endured death threats, and lost herself in Hollywood. Bellamy said she never learned how to be happy. Instead of making The Trial of Mary Dugan for Fox, she made a film for Universal for half the salary. Fox, after 5 years of work, fired her immediately. Ironically, Bellamy claimed her father's steam cabinet invention was also rejected by Fox in her youth. With the stock market crash of 1929, the economy was in free fall, and due to her mother's less than savvy business sense, Bellamy soon faced financial ruin. Her last notable film was the horror classic White Zombie in 1932, in which she played a young bride who falls under the spell of a mad plantation owner portrayed by Bela Lugosi. During the 1930s, she concentrated more on stage roles, playing a number of parts in new plays, including Intermission and Holiday Lady. She also made live appearances on a tour of the great motion picture theaters in the East, doing impersonations for which she wrote her own material. Bellamy had always enjoyed reading and writing, but in her 30s, this was a grueling schedule with 6 shows a day. She also did radio work in Chicago and Philadelphia, but the work soon dried up. She called this her Cinderella story in reverse, as she drank a bottle of perfume and then contemplated suicide as she realized how far she had fallen. Her love affairs first drew headlines in 1928 when she and Los Angeles bond broker Logan Metcalf slipped away to Tijuana to be wed. Within 4 days, they had separated. "She was the sweetest thing in the world while I was courting her," Metcalf told a judge, "but at our first meal after the wedding, she started being temperamental." Bellamy had refused to speak to Metcalf because of his fondness for eating ham and eggs, which she considered plebeian. However, there were darker forces at play under the surface. Metcalf demanded she stop working, saying she was giving too much of herself to the studios. Metcalf then accompanied Bellamy to the studios and demanded her contract be terminated. When she came home late one night from work, he threw a box of orchids at her. He then demanded a new car for himself for $14,000. She wrote him a check, which he ripped up, and demanded she share her bank account information with him instead. When she threatened to leave him, he locked her in a bathroom and cut his wrists. Bellamy fled to the studio as soon as she could escape and refused to go back to Metcalf. She called her family and asked for help. Lawyers were hired, and Metcalf was granted a divorce on April 25, 1928. They were married only 6 days. Madge and her mother then spent $25,000 on clothes and jewelry post-divorce. They also bought a new house in Los Angeles, adding to the family home and beach house. On January 20th, 1943, Bellamy was arrested in San Francisco and charged with assault with a deadly weapon after firing a .32 caliber revolver at her former lover, wealthy lumber executive Albert Stanwood Murphy, 3 times. Bellamy had just missed her father's funeral and was in an emotional state. She had no income. She had pawned her diamonds for $5,000. Bellamy had been having an affair with Murphy for 5 years before he ended the relationship in October 1942. They had met at a Hollywood party, and he invited her to his hunting trips in Scotia. After learning Murphy had married former model June Almy shortly after their breakup, Bellamy traveled to San Francisco to confront him and make him suffer somehow. She had been sending him poetry and songs, which he ignored. She renamed herself to a woman named Jean and worked at a bank in San Francisco to make ends meet while she stalked Murphy. She later admitted she walked around Murphy's apartment in the Nob Hill area for 4 days after reading about his marriage in New York. She visited his office and demanded a mink fur coat he promised her. She decided to reach out to Murphy's ex-wife, and they bonded over what a dog Murphy was. She eventually spotted Murphy leaving the Pacific Union Club on January 20th. While Murphy was getting into his car, Bellamy fired 3 shots at him. She later said, "I wasn't within speaking distance of him, but he saw me and shouted something I didn't understand. Maybe it was 'don't.' Then I guess I shot at him. He ducked and ran." She fired 3 times, hitting Murphy's car twice while the 3rd shot missed. Witnesses wrestled the gun out of her hands. Shortly after the shooting, Bellamy claimed that she did not intend to harm Murphy and that she just wanted to see him. "He wouldn't see me, so I took the little gun with me. I had had the little gun so long, I thought it was just a toy." She was also quoted as saying, "I only winged him, which is what I meant to do. Believe me, I'm a crack shot." She called him Stan and said he made her blue. In testimony, Bellamy claimed that the wealthy lumber company executive had called her his little Easter egg and promised to marry her. The actress added she was only trying to scare the gizzard out of him for choosing to marry a model about 20 years younger over her. On February 11, 1943, Bellamy pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of violating a gun law and was given a suspended 6-month sentence. She was also sentenced to 1 year of probation. Claire Windsor, a fellow silent film actress, had paid Bellamy's lawyer fees because Bellamy was broke. In July 1943, Bellamy sued Murphy for divorce in Las Vegas, claiming she and Murphy were married by mutual consent in April 1941 and had lived as husband and wife on and off for 4 years up until Murphy ended the relationship. Murphy did take Bellamy to Vegas to get married in 1941. Murphy had been divorced a year prior from a woman who was the mother of his children but would supposedly run naked through the neighborhood. Murphy was scared by his marriage and divorce, and so his subsequent marriage to a woman that was not Bellamy shocked her. Murphy encouraged her adulthood transformation, cutting her long hair into a bob and telling her to lose weight to gain roles. She charged Murphy with extreme mental cruelty and asked for both temporary and permanent alimony. In December 1943, Murphy asked the court to dismiss the suit, stating that he and Bellamy are not now and have never been husband and wife. On January 4th, 1944, a Nevada court denied Bellamy's divorce suit on the grounds that she and Murphy had just never been married. One day after the divorce case was dismissed, Bellamy was awarded a reported 6-figure out-of-court settlement from Murphy. So, I don't know what kind of argument Bellamy had, but it must have been a good one. The shooting and divorce filing generated publicity for Bellamy, but effectively ended her already fading career. She made her last screen appearance in the Northwestern film Northwest Trail in 1945. She returned to the stage in 1946 in the Los Angeles production of the risque Bad Girl Gone Good Holiday Lady, after which she retired. For her contributions to the film industry, she received a Motion Picture Star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1960. The star is located at 6517 Hollywood Boulevard. At this time, she was no longer living in the glamorous estate The Cedars. However, she had invested in property, including apartment buildings, with one of her lawyers, which kept her afloat. In her posthumously published autobiography, A Darling of the Twenties, Bellamy claimed that she lived in abject poverty after her retirement in 1945. She attributed her career decline due to her own choice of wanting to appear in light comedy and flapper roles that showcased her looks instead of more demanding roles. She did, however, have some holdings in real estate, which I mentioned, and owned a retail shop in which she worked to support herself. In her spare time, she wrote screenplays and novels, which were never purchased or published. She worked at a shipyard in the 1940s and 1950s. In the early 1980s, she sold the retail shop for double the amount she had paid for it and lived in relative financial comfort for the rest of her life. Following her retirement, Bellamy lived briefly in New Mexico, then moved to Ontario, California, where she cared for her mother during her final illness. She had also lived quietly in Riverside and San Bernardino counties for several decades after her film career took a plunge, and would visit her once elephant co-stars at the Los Angeles Zoo. Settling in Ontario, California in her later years, the feisty actress remained a witty conversationalist, but led a somewhat solitary lifestyle, acquaintances said. In her final years, she devoted time to political activism, including civil rights and feminism. In addition to her autobiography, she wrote two novels, a play, and short stories. She remained out of public view until the 1980s, when film historians and silent film fans had rediscovered her work and began requesting interviews. She also began attending screenings of the low-budget horror film White Zombie, which was a moderate success upon its initial release and has since become a cult classic. She lived past her 90th birthday and died on January 24, 1990, after seeking heart treatment at the San Antonio Community Hospital in Upland, California. Her autobiography, A Darling of the Twenties, was discovered by someone in her apartment and published 1 month after her death.